Welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today I'm chatting with Michaela Criniti. She is the Senior Marketing Manager of Brand Marketing at Crate & Barrel. Welcome, Michaela.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi, we're so excited to have you on the podcast today and to dive into your very nonlinear career journey and how you got into this space. Before we jump into all that fun stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Michaela. I am, as you mentioned, the Senior Brand Marketing Manager at Crate & Barrel. So the categories I cover are furniture, decor, and textiles. And then I also get to work on the collab partnerships, which are really fun. So those are typically our high profile, celebrity level collab partners, and they create exclusive lines with us. So that's super fun. So that's my work life. My outside life is I'm one of five, so I have a ton of siblings. I actually have a sister that's at Northwestern right now, so that's been fun having her in Chicago because that's
Oh,
where I am right now. And lots of my boyfriend and I are super creative, so we love everything under the sun in terms of anything art, music. We're huge deadheads and like all the good things in this world.
oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, do you find that Chicago really thrives in or really helps you thrive in that like creative area?
Yes, for sure. So this is my second, I was a boomerang. So I lived in Chicago right out of college. I'm from the East Coast, so that was like a big move for me. A lot of people, when you're from the East Coast, you kind of stay there, you go to New York. That's like the natural progression that you typically take. And I was like, I just got to try something different. So I moved to Chicago. I was here for a couple of years, and then I moved to DC for a different job opportunity. And I was so lacking that creative energy. DC is amazing and an incredible city to live in terms of historical and a really interesting community that's like ever evolving, ever changing. But I was missing that kind of creativity, energy that I got in Chicago. So don't don't overlook Chicago. I think it's really one of the most interesting, and like I say it's basically a smaller New York, but the Midwest nice. That's like what I always equate it to.
That's a good description. I like that. And then also
Yeah.
we're recording this right before St. Patrick's Day, which I know is
Yeah.
also so fun to celebrate in Chicago.
Yes, I am glad I'm sneaking this recording in because I have all of my cousins and siblings coming for St. Patrick's
Oh
Day.
my gosh, that's
Yes.
wild. So, yeah, are your siblings, are you youngest, oldest, or where do you fall within the five?
I'm second oldest. So I have an older sister who is still in DC. I have a younger brother who's at NYU right now studying photography. A sister who is 19 and she's at Northwestern. So just a freshman. And then one still in high school. So she's about to
Oh
graduate soon.
wow. Oh
So,
my gosh. I'm one of six kids and I never
oh,
find anybody that has like a lot of siblings. I feel like it's so rare now. But
yes.
that's also really special that you are close enough with them that they're all coming out to visit you.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
It'll be super fun. And it's my brother's 21st. So Lord help him
Oh
with,
my gosh, that's gonna be so fun.
yeah, we'll have a blast. So.
Okay, Michaela. So before we jump into all of the fun stuff you're doing at Crate and Barrel, I want to kind of go back, like I love to do with my guests, and kind of start with your first role out of college and talk about how you ended up here at Crate and Barrel in this industry, doing what you're doing now, and kind of what path got you there. So, can you tell me a little bit about what post grad was like for you and taking your first role at FCB?
Yeah, for sure. So my career journey is super non-linear, which I actually in when you are in the moment and you're taking all these career pivots, you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing that? I gave up a clear trajectory. I think it's one of the things that has made me it's given me such an advantage edge in my professional career. So I went to undergraduate school at a small liberal arts school called Hobart and William Smith. It's in the Finger Lakes, so upstate New York. And both of my parents did liberal art or went to liberal arts schools, and really prided themselves on the education that you get there. And you get such a broad education, and you get to try so many different roles, and you get exposed to so many different things. However, when you're trying to enter the workforce, it is challenging for sure. And so I graduated with I was an English major, because I almost did a marketing major, but I was nervous if I didn't like marketing, or if at my school it was called Media and Society, and I wasn't sure how that was going to translate with recruiters, like if they would understand that that is like an advertising and marketing career or major. And so, I chatted with my parents, and they were like, everyone needs good writers and readers and people that can think critically and are really composed. So why don't you major in English, and then you can minor in some other things that would round out that kind of goal to get to the advertising agency. So majored in English, in creative writing, and then double minored in art history and media and society is what it's called.
Okay.
So
very
when
broad, like you said, there's a lot of things
super
that you
broad.
covered. Okay.
And people laugh to this day, like even at Crate and Barrel, they're like, you did what? And that, like, how on earth did you land here? So you basically, my best advice is like, just like you are going to do in advertising, and if you're in marketing, you have to pitch ideas constantly, and you need to learn how to pitch yourself. So when I went to these interviews, and I was interviewing in Chicago, I had never been to Chicago. I didn't have any connections in Chicago except for like 2 friends at the time. I was like, I on the money for Chicago, but how am I going to do it? Like my parents were like, we don't have that many connections out there, but go for it, try it. And I interviewed at a lot of places, FCB being one of them. And when I was interviewing, I really thought about like my pitch and what my pitch was. And I said, listen, like my foundation is in writing and reading, in the sense of like, I can totally write decks, I can understand briefs, like that critical lens is super important. I have this creative eye from art history and understanding like how color composition works, and how like you tell storytelling through art. And then I had the other layer of the media and society of understanding like marketing and communications, and that kind of base layer. So that was my pitch when I went in. And I will say I got a lot of no's, because when you come to the Midwest, they look for the Big Ten, and they want to see that you graduated from a Big Ten or a large university with a marketing and advertising degree. So I got a lot of no's, but I was like, okay, it only fired me up more to like figure out who was going to be the one that would say yes. And FCB, I had an awesome interview. They pushed me along, and they were like, listen, we're thinking of hiring you as an intern. And I remember at the time I was like, oh, like all of my friends have full-time jobs, and I just want a full-time role. Like I want to say that I have a job. And it was between FCB and another smaller agency that gave me a full-time job. So it was internship at a big company or full-time job at a smaller company. And I was like, you know what? I don't know why I said it. To this day, I'm like, it was a very ballsy move, quite honestly. But I was like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to do the internship. I'm going to land this job, and I'm going to stay in Chicago. So I signed a year lease without any knowing of if I would nail this internship, and like worked my tail off those 10 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So it was stressful for sure. And I remember I was like, I think it was like week 9, and HR was kind of starting to do the exit interviews, because some of the interns go back to college, and then some of them are seniors that have graduated. So they were like starting to do the intern exit interviews. And I think I was filling out like a dog walking application when they were like, oh, Michaela, it's time for your exit interview. Because I was like, if this doesn't go well, I don't know what, like, I have no fallback plan. So I ended up getting it, thank God. And it just set me up for so much success, because I learned so much at that company, and about process, about advertising, about client services, financial tracking. Like I just got such a good base. And I was there for almost I ended up being there for almost like 2.5 years. Um,
Wow.
so it was amazing, but definitely risky and
Yeah.
a little nerve-wracking for sure.
So it was a 10-week internship program with the potential for it to be full-time after the internship.
Yes.
Okay, well that's nice that it was like a really short internship program, not like a long, like you were going to be an intern for like 6 months or a year. So definitely makes more
Yes.
sense on that risk that you took, but still super scary to take a risk like that. I'm also really curious. You mentioned that in your interviews you were selling yourself. And I
Hmm.
think that there are a lot of women that are on the job hunt that feel like they are not qualified for the jobs that they want, or they're feeling very similar to how you were. Maybe they do have a background in marketing, maybe they don't, but they're feeling unqualified. When you're selling yourself, was that something that, did you prepare a pitch before? How did you
Mm,
deliver it in the interviews? Or what advice do you have for someone who's looking to better sell themselves in an interview?
that's an awesome, awesome question. It is, to this day, I kick myself when I don't prep and when I don't think about like, what do I want to say? How do I want to say it? What do I need from them? Like, what answers am I trying to get from them? And that goes interviewing, in client meetings, in internal meetings. Like, take 5 minutes to just jot some ideas down, because those 5 minutes could be a game changer of just getting you set up for success. So I totally encourage you guys, even if it's, I think I still have like all my notebooks of when I'm interviewing and what I prepped for each meeting. And so I always looked at whoever's interviewing me, I look at their LinkedIn and see their backstory, because sometimes it's really interesting and you can bring it up and say, oh my gosh, I noticed that you were at, let's say, DDB. Did you happen to run into this person that I know? And then they can be like, oh my gosh, yes, I worked with them. And
Mm,
then you can say, oh, that's great. And then you can reach out to that person and kind of you can start to widen your network so much more. And you can also get information about what the company is like. And so if you don't do that prep work of like, no, trying to figure out who you're interviewing and what they do, what the company stands for, because that's super important too, of what's their ethos, what's their brand identity, what do they care about? Those are the best questions that I've had going into interviews. Is I say, okay, so you guys are all about, um, really, you pride yourselves on client relations. How are you guys different from your competitors? What do you do differently? Like, those are the types of questions you can always ask in interviews. And sometimes there are really good answers and it gives you a deeper understanding of the company. And sometimes they're not, because the brand ethos is not like deeply embedded in the employees and in the work culture. And that's, for me, that's like a huge red flag. That's where I'm like, okay, that's probably not the right place for me.
Okay, so asking questions that are a little bit deeper than just stuff about the role, but also kind of
Yes.
digging in and asking about the company culture, their ethos, their value, their product, and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, awesome. Curious, how many questions do you typically ask at the end of an interview?
I think I usually, my rule of thumb is five, but I usually only get to three, and that's fine. Like, you do
Mhm.
not need to get, unless they're urgent questions that you need answered in order to continue down like the interview process and your evaluation of like, do you want to work for this company or not? But I usually just ask three, and it's usually one about the role of who I'm reporting to. Like, I always love to understand how they work, because work style is a real thing. And you want to make sure that whoever you're directly reporting into, you have like a good synergy with, because you could be selling concrete or you could be selling Rolexes. And if you work for someone that believes in you, believes in your career growth, is an advocate for you, is helping you grow, like, to me, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So I always ask about who I'm interviewing with, the company, and then like one random question.
Okay. Okay. I love that. Amazing. Good. That's really good actionable advice, I think, for going into interviews. And the preparing, like you said, is so, so important. And for the students that I help teach, one of the things I always tell them is that you need to go look at the company website. And then also, if you're interviewing in
Yes.
marketing, to go look at their marketing channels. So if you're going to be doing their social media, check out their social media. If you're going to be doing their email, subscribe to their email, but make sure that you're also looking at everything holistically. And then you're absolutely right. It helps you stand out so much more in your interviews.
Yes. Oh my God, that's such good advice too about the keeping like social media and emails. You're
Yeah.
right. You
Yeah.
totally should be doing that.
Yeah. Like so look at the job description. You can see what you'll be doing and then
Yep.
go look at those channels and dive deeper. All right. So after your time here at FCB, so you were getting the agency experience for about 3 years, and then you moved on to Urban Country Designs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so tell me about this switch.
Okay. So this was while I was at FCB, I was working on amazing, really big clients, really high scope of work. So like a ton of volume. I was working on I was working on alcohol, I was working on airplanes, I was all over the place, which is amazing. That's the kind of experience you get at an agency, is you get to get your hands in a lot of different cookie jars, so to speak. And to be honest, I reached a point where I was like, I need to be more creative. And so I was an account manager or I think I ended up as an account executive. So basically what that is you're on the client services side of agency, because there's really like two distinctions. So it's client services and then there's the creative team. And I love working with creative people. And that's like a non-negotiable for me in all of my career, is like, I have to be in a creative environment. And I reached a point where I was like, okay, Michaela, want to be more creative. So what are some different career paths that I can take that are like exercising my creativity more, and not just kind of being a part of a team that is creative? And so I'm like a Band-Aid girl. So I just like ripped the Band-Aid off. So I told everyone under the sun that I wanted to try interior design. I have no background in interior design, nothing in architecture. I just have always loved it. Like even growing up, I loved interior design. My mom like randomly found this whole sketchbook full of me drawing rooms, which I didn't even remember. And I was
Gosh, that is so cute.
it was hilarious. And so I had always loved it, but I think because I felt daunted even thinking about that as a career option out of college, because I didn't have the degree, I didn't have the background. And so I just immediately wrote it off and was like, oh, you need to go to architecture school if you want to be in interior design, or you need to get certified, and I don't have that certification. And so I started telling everyone and this is always something that I do when I'm job hunting, is I take like an absurd amount of informational interviews where I'm just like, hey, I know you're kind of adjacent to this career or this job or this person. Can I talk with you like 15 minutes, 30 minutes? I'm just trying to get my feet wet and understand like how you got here. And so I
And are you doing
started
that outreach on LinkedIn? Like, are you just messaging people with similar job titles?
anyway. Well, what I try to do is I try to connect with, it's twofold. So it's like my first goal is finding friends of friends, because
Okay.
that's always a lot more you get a lot more bang for your buck, in the sense of people will take calls with you and are like generally more because they feel indebted to their friend, of like, oh yeah, of course I'll take a call. And so that's like my first course of action. And then if I can't get enough traction there, then I start looking for companies, and I'll just start messaging people that are the roles that I would be interested in.
And then what will you say in the message?
Oh my gosh. So the awkward thing is you have to be as friendly as possible via technology, right? So like you have to somehow get your energy through a screen. So I try to keep it very conversational and not super formal, but I am like buttoned up and my grammar is always checked and I'm not too informal, but I try to say like, hey, I have been looking at X, Y, and Z design I've been following you guys for 2 years now. I'm curious if you have any open roles or if you'd be willing to chat with me just about your experience at the company. So I keep it short and sweet so that it doesn't feel like first of all, just looking, our emails, our Slacks, our LinkedIn's are crazy. People reach out to us 24/7 when you're at a company that people are curious about. And so I genuinely tried to like take those calls because I remember how hard it was to, get going. And people are generally like pretty responsive, and or they'll point you to someone else. So you just never know. The answer is no unless you ask, is
Yeah.
always my rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So
That's really awesome to hear. And again, I love all the actionable advice you're sharing, but I think that's such an important thing to do is doing those types of informational interviews or those coffee chats, because you never know what you're going to learn. I'm excited to dive into what you learned, but I
yes,
think the biggest reason why people don't do it is because they're like, no one's going to say yes. Like they won't say yes, or I'm afraid of hearing no, or it just is a little bit scary. And I've asked multiple guests about this topic, and they're always like, more people will respond than you think will respond. And I
yes,
hope that's really encouraging. And I also love how you're saying that you're being casual, you're being friendly, you're being respectful of their time, maybe starting by just asking for 15 minutes, I think is a great idea. So I love that. I think that's great. Okay, tell me what happened with your
yes.
informational interviews.
So I was, doing all my outreach, friends of friends, companies I wanted to work for in Chicago. I was all over the place. And this one woman was a friend of a friend. So I had worked with her friend at agency at FCB. And she was like, hey, would you ever want to chat with my college friend? She's in DC. I don't even know if you'd be interested, but she, got an interior design degree. Maybe it would be good just to understand even what that looks like how many years is it? What certifications should you look for? So on and so forth. So I took this call and she was so nice. I got such good nuggets from her about like what certifications I could look into, how I could do it. Cause you don't know. Like when you're trying out a new role, it's so daunting to even understand like the ecosystem of a company and what roles should I be looking for? What's an entry role I could think about? Like those types of questions I feel like are really helpful to ask on informational interviews, and just to get like lay of the land of what even is out there, because if you're not in the industry, it's really hard to know. So I had a great call with her, sent a follow-up note, thank you so much for your time, and didn't hear back from her, but like I had no action items for her. But then about 3 weeks later, she texted me and was like, hey, I am leaving because I'm moving to Denver. And she was like, I have no idea if they would hire you, but would you be interested in interviewing? Because they definitely want to backfill my position. So I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like I will fly to DC today. So to this day, I'm very close with the person who hired me, and she runs the entire firm and store. And we laugh about it. I'm like, I don't know why you hired me. Like we cackle about this because I don't know why she hired me, but I went to DC. I did a couple of phone interviews with them. I went to DC, did an in-person interview, and they did hire me. And I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. This is what I want. And then when I got there, so how Urban Country works is it's a showroom for interior designers, but also to the public. So what was different for me was I started out literally working the floor for the public. And I was like, wait a second. Wait, I just gave up a very career driven, very focused path forward for my career in advertising, where I knew exactly what I needed to do in order to climb that ladder and to get more responsibility, for on Saturdays selling sectionals to people that would just walk into the store. And I was like, oh dear, I think I made big grave error here. So I went to my manager and I was like, listen, I will put in the time. I'm happy. I think it was like, I must have been 2 or 3 months in at this time. So I was really trying to like show them like, I can do more, I can handle more. And I went to her and I was like, how do I get more? Like, how do I want to be busier. I want to be like, I want to position myself where you guys need to see growth in this company. And she was like, that's super interesting. I actually have a trade position opening up for the summer. Why don't you intern, really just help out the trade program, which is basically you work with interior designers, architects, contractors, and help them in that department and see how it goes and go from there. And I was like, great. that was all the bait I needed, and I did. And I, again, hustled. I like was trying to rethink of really old processes that I could help change, just given like I had so much structure and great background from FCB. I was like, how do I translate this to interior design? And how do I bring my client services hat from FCB to now designers and talking to them and selling products? It's the same thing. You, at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing. So, and we ended up growing that business like crazy in the 3 years I
Oh,
was there.
so let me clarify first. So you were at an agency, marketing agency before. Then you decided that you wanted to go into interior design. And so you completely even switch states or go all the way over to DC. And was that first role an interior designer role? Was that your title, or what was your title there before you switched into helping with the showroom or helping
I
with
think
the show?
it was interior designer because how they positioned it was you could take on your own clients within the showroom. So if people came in and were
Okay.
like, oh, I have an apartment and I need it furnished, I could take it on. And someone, obviously, like people would help me because I was new at the time, but like you could take on your own design clients. And so that's why they gave me that title. But then once I got there, I was like, no, no, I want to be with the designers, the architects. Like I gotta
Mhm.
like I want more volume. I want bigger orders. I want to see like how can I like max out my capacity?
Also, Michaela, I loved how you phrased that and you went to your boss and was like, I want to do more. Where can I have the most impact on growth for your company? I think any employer, that is like music to their ears to hear that someone wants to help them like be more profitable or grow and is actually thinking bigger picture than just their role. And I
Yes.
also know I talk to a lot of women who, they have maybe they work on this in the sales team and they want to be doing marketing at their company, or they want to be doing adjacent roles. I love kind of how you pitched yourself to want to go help and be more involved in another area. I think that is such good advice, and people should take notes and say the same thing. I also want to know and also kind of go back a little bit to, because you talked about how you got the first role by selling yourself. Here you're
Hmm.
switching again. You have zero experience in this industry. I know you say you're still like surprised that she hired you, but how did you position yourself in an interview for a role that you had no experience for?
So such a good question. And this is where like us as women, we push ourselves so down. And if you can take one thing from this phone call, this podcast, this interview, like you have to sell yourself and you have to believe it. If you don't believe in yourself, it's not going to happen. So that's why prepping for meetings is so important. And think about like, okay, what are my selling points that I can transfer from my old job to this job? So what I went in with this interview is I said, for one, I just want to be transparent and I don't have a background in this, but I am so hungry to learn it. I am pouring myself to understand this business and understand, again, like the ecosystem of how interior designers work with their clients, work with architects, work with builders. Like there's so many people, how it works with shipping and deliveries. Like there are so many people that touch that industry. And I was just said, I was so hungry to learn. And these are the skills that I have from my previous company that are transferable. And it was budget management. So if a client comes in and says, I can only spend $10,000, I can only spend $1,000, great. I know how to make that work. And I like project management was a big one that I pushed in this role. So I said, I've, handled Super Bowl ads. I've handled these Olympic ads, like very high profile, intense campaigns. And I was like, and I've handled them and I can do that here. So that all of that project management of working with different teams and figuring out how to pivot and how to adjust based on like the needs of the deliverables, like I can do that here. So it was budget management, project management, and then just client management. So I said, I work with clients every single day and I have to be external facing. So there's a level of professionalism you need, but also you need to balance being, clients want to work with people they like at the end of the day. And so it's, you know, for me, who sometimes does have this, like, I want everyone to like me, it was a little bit hard in agency of being like, okay, some people will not like me, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But who are the people that I want to work with that I do want to like me? And how do I not only make them like my work style, my work, the work of the team, but like also me personally, because that's where like really good work comes out of, is when you work with people that you truly enjoy. So
Yeah.
I think those were the biggest three that I took into that interview um,
That
for
is
urban country.
that is, I think, just such great advice. So many, again, there's I think a huge listener base of the podcast that is trying to get into a new role or even just get into the marketing industry, and they have no experience and they just feel so much imposter syndrome going into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved your point that I think, especially for women, we hold ourselves to such a high standard, and we want to apply for the roles that we're qualified for, and we're maybe more afraid to apply to the roles that we're not qualified for. And one thing that you touched on that I want to just mention one more time is how you really emphasized how much you were willing to learn. Like, you didn't try to like ignore the fact that you didn't have enough experience or pretend that that wasn't a thing. You were like, it is a thing, but I'm so hungry. And then the other thing you mentioned is that you really sold your transferable skills. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned, okay, you didn't just say, okay, yeah, I have these transferable skills, but you really painted a picture, I'm imagining, to the employer of like, this is what I've done before, and this is how it translates to the interior design industry. And you drew that connection for them and really showed them. So I love those two things. This is, I mean, amazing advice. Okay, so you get the role. You're not
Yeah.
exactly where you want to be. You pitch yourself again. You sell yourself again to kind of get into a different area. And kind of, what did your role look like as you kind of, before we get into Pottery Barn? I know you were here for about 4 years, so kind of what did the end look like for you and your interior design dream?
Yeah. So it was so fun. Like, I am so glad that I did that role because it was risky. It was like, I always equate it to like the Wild West. Like, I had no idea kind of what my day to day would look like. And that's really scary. Like, I want to acknowledge that when you jump either positions or even industries, like, it's really scary to know, what is my day to day going to look like? Am I going to be good at it? And you just have to like lean in. Like, you can do so much more than you think you can. And it was the best thing I've done in my, probably one of the best things I've done in my life. And so my day was super different every day because it was a firm of about 12 people. So we're small, we're nimble, like, you have to get scrappy. But it was basically 70% of my day was working with the trade and managing their orders, helping them with their client meetings. So like, you basically facilitate their client meetings and say like, okay, designers would come to me and say, I need a sofa 105 inches wide, 46 inches deep. What would you recommend? And for like a coastal style. And I'd be like, oh, great. Here's three different options we can work from. Let's start looking at fabrics. So it's like, it was a very custom heavy place. And so the possibilities were endless. I'm like trying to think. One of our projects was a Palm Springs house, and it was a pink velvet, like 9-piece sectional with, um, it had, oh, what was it? It was like fringe at the bottom, like tassel fringe at the
Oh my
bottom. And
gosh.
I was like, when do you get to do that? When do you get to just like dream up this crazy idea and it comes to life? And this sectional was huge. It took up the whole room. It was
Oh my
like
gosh.
so fun to work on. And so that was really a lot of my day. And then the 30% of my day was my boss and I actually were able to take on our own design clients. So because we had such good relationships with interior designers, if they were like, oh, listen, like, this person reached out to me, I can't take them on at this time, I'm going to pass them to you. That is like the amazing thing about the interior design industry, is a lot of people are trying to like help build up each other's businesses. And so they would send them our way, or we would just get new clients because people were like, I love Julie and Michaela. How do I work with them more? Like, I want to work with them. So that was really where I got to exercise my creativity, because that was start to finish. We were doing everything from one room to whole houses. And, she was incredibly knowledgeable. So it was really helpful for me to kind of just learn on the fly. But then also, we were a really good balance because I always said she was like the crazy artist and she had all these amazing ideas. And then I was kind of the person that would help her with the structure and the process and how do we make it like super buttoned up for our clients and so that they feel like that was where my strength was. So it's all about like leaning into your strengths and figuring out what those are early in your career.
So after this incredible interior design stint of yours, and which was a significant chunk of your career, you decided to go back into marketing. So tell me about that switch. So this takes us to your current role at Crate and Barrel. So a little over 2 years ago, you went back to Chicago and started there as the brand marketing manager. So talk to me about that transition.
This is what I mean. This is like crazy, crazy town, right? I'm sure the people listening are like, I cannot keep up. So basically, I was there for 4 years. And like I said, great growth. It was amazing. There was a point in my personal life where I was like, I think I want to move back to Chicago. I'm really missing that energy. And I also realized I really missed like the data analytics and I missed like deeply understanding a customer and like all of that that goes with like just the insane amount of data that you get when you're in a marketing role. So I was like, okay, well, how do I want to go back to agency, which I loved, but I was like, I had a hard time working on the brands that I didn't feel passionate about, i.e., like aerospace. Incredible, right? Planes are amazing. They are, the fact that we can fly is truly a scientific feat. But for Michaela, I was like, I'm not passionate about planes. And so it was a hard business for me to work on. And so when I was thinking about transitioning, I was like, okay, we know we want to stay creative. So check, we have to figure out a creative industry. We know we want a little more structure, a little more analytics, a little bit more of like process. I was like missing that like that process part of it and just a little more structure to my day-to-day. And the last thing was I realized I was like, I have to be passionate about what I'm working on. I can't no longer just kitchen sink it, and it has to be something that I care about. So when I started job searching, hunting, I did two different avenues and I went marketing or I went interior design. So I was looking at smaller firms in Chicago to be, again, like an interior designer at that firm. And when I was interviewing all over the board, I was like, there's something about interior design. It's a tough industry in that unless you open your own firm, it's hard to make money in sometimes. It can be hard. It's not to say you can't do it, but like it can be hard. And especially because I didn't have the background that probably qualified me for the higher paying roles. So I had an honest moment with myself where I was like, usually money, I would sometimes bypass salaries for opportunities. And this time around, I was like, I'm not doing it. I want to make more money. And it's like a goal of mine personally and professionally. So that was another factor I had to factor in. And when I was researching, I was like, okay, what are big companies in Chicago? And like, what are big marketing companies in Chicago? What are the opportunities? And little did I know, I had no idea that Crate and Barrel was headquartered in Chicago. And I remember finding it on, if it's like Indeed or something. And I was like, wait, they're in Chicago. And this is like my old life and my new life marrying perfectly in the city I want to be in. And that was that. I was like, okay, I am going to do whatever it takes to get this job. And I started the interview process and it was for an associate brand manager role. Like I was willing to even go down, and they called me and they were like, you didn't get that job, but we actually think you're higher. We think you're a brand manager level. And so we want to push you to this team. You interviewed with X person and they loved you and they want to bring you over to their team. So
That's amazing. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Okay, so a couple of things from that decision I want to highlight as well is that you mentioned that at one point in your life you were willing to sacrifice salary for opportunity. And then now in this point you were like, actually, no, I do want to get paid more, and you were honest with yourself about that. I love that you mentioned that, because I think that there's times in your life where you are okay kind of accepting
Hmm.
the lower salary, because like you said, you get to, maybe try a new career path, or get to get your foot in the door at a company that you wouldn't have been able to get your foot in the door otherwise. But I also like how I think especially sometimes as women, it's harder to maybe want to be a little bit more vocal about wanting to be able to earn more money and to just chase that, which I think is absolutely, okay if that's what you're prioritizing in your life. So love that you made that switch. Love that you went after that. And then you kind of settled on Crate and Barrel, which makes perfect sense because it combines your marketing experience with your interior design experience, and like that's the perfect fit. So going into your application there, I'm curious, did you customize it at all specifically like for Crate and Barrel, or how did you tailor yourself to be able to get an opportunity there?
Yeah, so that was the first time that I did tailor my resume and cover letters are always I'm sorry, cover letters I always did personalize, but like I literally had a template for interior design firms. That was my resume. And then I had a template for marketing jobs. And they were different. They obviously highlighted some, um, similar projects and things that I was really proud of, but they were worded differently. And
Mhm.
so that was the first time I had ever done that. And I remember I was talking with my mom, who is um, on the side, she does career coaching. She just is an incredible marketer in the financial industry. And she, she has always admired my creative career, but I think it's hard for her to understand because she's in financials. So it's like very different when we talk. She's talking about like 401ks, and I'm talking about, I don't know, commercials. Like it's apples to zebras is what we say. So, but she did give me that advice of like, you should really think about doing two different resumes. And I remember when she told me, I was like, oh, that's so much work. And I don't know how I'm going to make them different, but I did. And it was really a smart move. So it's not to say you have to do it for every single job, but maybe if you're applying for different roles within different industries, it is worth to have like a test A, test B kind of thing.
Yeah, I recommend the same thing when I talk to women who are interested. I know when I graduated, I had a degree in marketing and finance. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to do. I had two separate resumes, one for each, because you can just, you can elaborate more on your finance experience in one, and then on the other one, you can elaborate more on your marketing experience or whatever it is for you. But I think that's really great advice. Okay, so at Crate and Barrel, can you talk to me? I know you kind of teased us a little bit with what your role looked like, but what does your role entail? Also very curious kind of what those partnerships look like, and if there's any favorite ones that you have that you've worked on.
Oh my gosh, that's like asking me to pick a favorite child. They're all so fun and so different. But so my day to day is anything that touches furniture, decor, and textiles I have to have my eyes on. So I work really closely with like my merch partners, my customer analytics, my data analytics team, and I am in charge of my ecom team. And then it's my job to then manage all of my various channels on my team. So we have email and SMS, paid social, organic social, PR. I feel like I'm missing a couple. Ecom, stores, so like the retail component. So it's my job to like say a sofa is selling really well. How do I continue that momentum for that sofa across all of those channels and make sure that there's carry through for that sofa? Or is it we have a huge campaign, i.e., we're launching a new seasonal trend and we need to make sure that all the channels are firing at the same time. And so it feels like this really cohesive and robust campaign. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like my day to day. It's obviously there's so many different hats we wear, and sometimes I'm in my budgeting hat, sometimes I'm in my project management hat, sometimes we're in legal trying to read through contracts and understand like what do we want out of this influencer and things like that. So it's a very dynamic role that allows me to do a lot of different things. And as far as my collabs, I can't pick one of them, but they've all been so fun. I've worked on 3 now.
Oh my God. So what, can you tell us what they are then if you can't pick one?
Yeah, so it is Leanne Ford, Athena Calderon, and Jake Arnold, and they're all really, incredibly, incredibly talented interior designers. And they're just being able to understand first of all, interior designer is like one role they play. They have like 8 other offshoot creative products or projects that they all work on. And it's just so energizing to be around people like that are constantly trying to reinvent themselves, trying to figure out, okay, like I've done that. What do I want to do now? Like what's my next goal in this life? And we basically, what they do is they work with our product design team and design exclusive furniture, decor, textiles, kitchen and entertaining, like whatever their collab touches. And they create it with our product design team. And then it's the marketing team job to then launch the campaign in this really, it's interesting because you have to balance the Crate and Barrel voice with their own voice because they have worked so hard to have this really genuine, authentic voice, but you also now need to ladder it to Crate and Barrel. So it's really fun to be able to storytell. And like when you were talking about the stalking and just, really when you're interviewing, looking at their social media, signing up for their emails, I do the same thing. When we hear about this new collab partner, if I'm not already following them, I'm like, who are they? Okay, follow. And then you start to understand them and you like can understand not only the group of people that they surround themselves with, the projects that they're working on, what energizes them as like just personal human beings. And it's fascinating. And that's been like a big unlock for me, even as I write my briefs. I'm like, I want to make sure that I deeply understand these collab partners because the product design team, they've been working with them for 3 years now, but I'm just getting introduced to them, and we have a year-ish to execute this campaign. So you almost have to get up to speed. I call it like crash course. Like you have to get up to speed quick if you're not already kind of in their world. But it's a really, that is arguably the most fun part of my job.
It's really beautiful hearing this role, knowing now your career journey of what got you here, just seeing how all the puzzle pieces fit together to form this beautiful career that you built for yourself now. So thank you so much for walking us through all of that and sharing all of your advice. I'm my last question I have for you, Michaela, is do you have now that you're here at Crate and Barrel, you're getting to do both of your passions of interior design and marketing. What advice do you have for someone who's earlier in their career and be feeling a little bit lost on what they're supposed to do or what their next step is?
I think that, and it's taken me a really long time to figure out this balance, but if you can be as authentic as you can in your career, opportunities will come up, you will get the recognition you deserve, you will get so much growth out of your career and in such a like profound way that you'll be so proud of. So I just encourage people, and even people at Crate, when I talk to them and they are asking about early in your years, like how do you differentiate yourself? Everyone's already different. Like at the end of the day, no one is the same. And you just have to lean into what makes you different. And that goes for interview process, but that also goes for like once you're in the role, what is your day to day? Like, how do you behave? And behave is the wrong word, but like, how do you conduct yourself? And for me, I think I was so nervous and I felt like I had to fit this really cookie cutter mold of like what an account executive looked like at FCB and what an interior designer looked like. And I started towards the end of my interior design stint, I started to lean more into like, okay, who am I as a person? And like, I am a series of contradictions. I wear skirts, long skirts, and high top sneakers. Like, already you're like, are you girly or do you dress more tomboy? Like, confusing. I love art, and I work out like a crazy person. Series of contradictions. Like those series of contradictions are what make you so different. And even at work, like I felt like I constantly had to like stifle my energy or like my excitement. And then I was like, why? I don't do that in my personal life. Like people know that my energy is through the roof. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like, there's a way that you can be professional and also have energy through the roof. And I started to just like lean into that. And I just feel like it has proven to be so valuable in just I enjoy work more. The relationships I have at work are much deeper. And I feel like people truly know who I am and I feel very seen at work. I think that's the distinction is like you want to feel seen, you want to feel like people deeply understand you. And I think the only way you can do that is just by being your true authentic self. So like don't feel like you have to do a cookie cutter thing. You can be very good at your job and very different from your counterpart. So,
I love that. I love that phrase, a series of contradictions. I think even a good exercise would be to write like on a notepad, like I am a series of contradictions and write out all of your contradictions, even if they're just like little silly, like silly ones, like how you said, I wear like long skirts with high top sneakers. I think that everyone has their own unique version of what those are. And I think that could be a good step towards figuring out what makes you unique or just and like you said, how to be more your more authentic self at work because that will help you feel more fulfilled, that will give you more energy. That I know for me, the times when I am being social and it's the most straining, it's when I'm feeling like I have to put on a front. And I
yeah,
think it's the same when it comes to your work. And um yeah, I think that's such beautiful advice to give, especially when you're younger in your career to lead with that. I think you'll find yourself in roles where, like you said, you feel seen. And I think all of us at a human based level all want to feel seen in our relationships, in our life, and especially in our career. And I think that's like the easiest one to kind of like brush to the side of like, oh, it's not that important in my job. But I think to have really fulfilling work, it absolutely is. So I love that advice, Michaela. You have just been a joy to interview today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your advice. It has been so educational and inspirational. I'm so happy. So thank you so much.
of course. And I hope that if anyone like wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, if they want to talk more, I am here and I'm happy to help. So
Thank you. Thank you, Michaela.
thank you.